It's Christmas. But sometimes, even in the calmest moments, history whispers. Welcome to the mystery of Christmas. But what if this story didn't begin in Bethlehem? What if its roots reach far deeper, into a land of blazing suns and endless sand? A land where winter was not marked by snow, but by the dying of the sun itself. The symbols we still cherish today were first carved into stone thousands of years ago. Uncover the hidden echoes between ancient Egypt and the celebration we call Christmas. They performed awe rituals. They made offerings to Ra, the sun god, the source of all existence. The celebration didn't end on December 21st. The ancient Egyptians marked this period with festivals that extended beyond the solstice, celebrating the gradual return of the sun's strength. Within days after the solstice, even with the naked eye, you could begin to see it. The sun was rising earlier. The days were growing longer. The light was returning. This period marked the rebirth of the sun. In Egyptian theology, this wasn't just Ra returning to strength.
This connected to the mythology of Horus, the young sun god, the divine infant who represented new beginnings. The symbolism of a divine child bringing light resonates across many cultures. The Egyptians used powerful metaphors of light, of illumination, of the sun as life-giver. Centuries later, in a different context, similar language would be used in Christianity. Is this continuity, cultural exchange, or universal human metaphors? Scholars continue to debate. Let me tell you a story. Recorded by the Greek historian Plutarch in the 1st century BCE, it's a story of love, of murder, of resurrection, and of hope for renewal. Once upon a time, there was a king named Osiris. He ruled Egypt with wisdom and justice, teaching his people agriculture, civilization, order. He was beloved, he was divine, but Osiris had a brother, Set, consumed by jealousy, blackened by rage. One night, during a feast, Set betrayed him. He murdered Osiris, sealed his body in a coffin, cast it into the Nile. But the story didn't end there. Isis, Osiris's wife, the goddess of magic and motherhood, refused to accept his death. She searched the Nile. She combed the deserts. Her tears, the myths say, formed the annual flood that brought life to Egypt. And when she found his body, she performed a miracle.
Rise, my
through her
love,
magic, through her love, she temporarily resurrected Osiris.
again.
And from their union, a child was conceived. His name was Horus. Now here's where we need to be careful. Some late sources from the 4th century CE and after associate Horus's birth with late December, around the time of the winter solstice. But we must be clear. This association appears in later texts, not in the earliest Egyptian sources from 3,000 years ago. What is ancient and well documented is the iconography.
Isis, seated on a throne, crowned with the solar disk between horns, holding the infant Horus on her lap. the child's finger raised to his lips, the gesture of sacred silence. Mother and child, divine love, the protective embrace. Now, fast forward to the 4th century CE. Egypt has become Christian. The new faith spreads along the Nile, carried by tradition through St. Mark, embraced by communities who would become the Coptic Church. And what do we find? Images of the Virgin Mary, seated on a throne, crowned with divine light, holding the infant Jesus on her lap. The visual awe parallel is striking. Scholars at institutions like Cambridge University and the Biblical Archaeology Society have documented this carefully. When Christianity arrived in Egypt, it didn't erase the old symbols. It adapted them. It gave them new meaning within a new theological framework. The Mother Goddess became the reverent Virgin Mother. The divine child took on all new significance. But the image, the architecture, the power of that maternal embrace, that visual language continued. This is how cultures evolve, through adaptation, not erasure. Let's talk about timing and preparation. In Christian tradition, Advent is the 4-week period before Christmas, 28 days of preparation, of hopeful waiting, of spiritual readiness for the coming celebration. In ancient Egypt, there were festivals commemorating Osiris that involved periods of ritual mourning and preparation. One cycle lasted approximately 28 days, involving symbolic death and rebirth. The priests would create an effigy of Osiris, made of soil and seeds, and ceremonially bury it. They would perform awe prayers, make offerings, reenact the mythology of death and resurrection. The structure of preparation followed by celebration is a pattern we see repeated. Are these connections direct? Did one influence the other? Or are these universal human patterns, ways we mark time, prepare for renewal, celebrate hope? The honest answer is, we're not entirely sure. It's likely some of both. There was another major festival, the Sed Festival. Often celebrated during winter months, though not exclusively in December. This was a profound ritual of royal awe renewal. The pharaoh would participate in rituals of symbolic death and rebirth. He'd be stripped of his royal garments, humbled before the gods, then ritually restored. His power renewed, his divine mandate confirmed. Where did this happen? The Temple of Karnak in Luxor. If you've walked through those massive columns, those towering pillars that seem to pierce the sky, then you know the awe-overwhelming power of that sacred space. On the winter solstice, something remarkable happens at Karnak. As the sun rises, its rays align with the temple architecture, illuminating the hypostyle hall. Hundreds of columns glowing with golden light. This wasn't accidental. It was architecturally designed. The light flooding the temple symbolized the return of Ma'at, cosmic order, the balance of the universe, triumphing over chaos. The Egyptians built meaning into their very structures. The festivals included offerings of plants that stayed green throughout the dry season. Palm fronds, papyrus reeds, plants that refuse to wither, symbols of enduring life. And what do we do at Christmas? We bring evergreen trees into our homes. We decorate them. We gather around them. Now, to be clear, the Egyptians had no pine trees.
And the Christmas tree as we know it emerged in the 16th century Germany. So, is there a direct line from Egyptian palm fronds to German fir trees? Number. Not a straight line, but the symbolism of bringing living greenery indoors during the darkest time of year, of celebrating life that persists when nature seems dormant. That idea has deep roots in human culture, including in ancient Egypt. The palm was sacred in Egyptian religion. It represented victory and renewal. Hanging these fronds on doorways served both decorative and protective purposes. It was a way of saying, life continues here. Light dwells here. These kinds of traditions spread through trade routes, through cultural exchange. The Greeks adopted similar practices. The Romans during Saturnalia. Their massive celebration from December 17th to 23rd also used evergreen decorations. Eventually, in the 16th century Germany, someone brought an entire fir tree inside. The Christmas tree was born, but its spiritual DNA, its symbolic meaning, connects to something ancient and widespread in human culture. At the temple of Edfu, built in the Ptolemaic period, there are reliefs carved into stone. They show Isis protecting the infant Horus beneath the sheltering branches of a sacred tree. The tree of life, the tree of protection. When Christianity arrived in Egypt around 42 CE through apostolic mission, the Coptic Christians encountered these powerful images. They understood these deep symbols, and they adapted them. The sacred tree took on new Christian meanings. Every Christmas, we place a star atop the tree. We sing about the Star of Bethlehem, the celestial beacon that guided the Magi to the newborn Christ. Did ancient Egypt have significant stars in their cosmology? Absolutely. The star Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky. The Egyptians called it Sopdet, and its rising was crucial to their calendar and agriculture. In Egyptian astronomy, or Ush, Sirius was associated with the goddess Isis. The heliacal rising of Sirius heralded the annual flooding of the Nile. No Nile flood, no crops, no civilization. So when Sirius appeared, it meant survival. It meant rebirth. It meant life returning to the land. The star of Isis announcing renewal. Now, Sirius's rising didn't always align perfectly with the winter solstice. Egyptian astronomy was more focused on its summer appearance. But the concept of a significant star marking divine events, that's present in Egyptian thought. Whether this directly influenced the Star of Bethlehem narrative, scholars debate. The Gospel of Matthew mentions Magi from the east following a star to find the Christ child.
The Bible doesn't actually specify how many there were, but tradition settled on three gifts, 3 wise men. In Egyptian mythology, Horus had divine protectors during his vulnerable childhood. Some traditions mention protective deities watching over him. Is there a connection to the 3 magi? Possible, but we must be cautious about claiming certainty. Scholars emphasize something crucial here. These are not exact copies. This is not plagiarism. Christianity didn't simply steal Egyptian mythology. What we're observing is cultural adaptation, religious evolution, elements absorbed, reinterpreted, transformed through new theological lenses. This is how human culture has always worked. The virgin birth? Not in Egyptian mythology. Isis and Osiris conceived Horus through union. The exact date of December 25th for Horus only documented in late sources, 4th century CE and later. The theological meaning of Jesus Christ, entirely distinct from Horus mythology. So what we have is possible influence, shared symbolism, cultural dialogue, not replication, not copying, a conversation across centuries, between cultures, between faiths. Today, in Egypt, millions of Coptic Christians celebrate Christmas on January 7th. Why? Because they follow the older Julian calendar, not the Gregorian calendar most of the world uses. The Coptic Christmas Eve service is held at midnight, in darkness. And during the service, trumpets sound, loud, brassy, triumphant. These trumpets echo ceremonial horns used in ancient Egyptian festivals. The same sound, the same purpose, to announce the return of the light, cultural memory preserved through practice. After the service, they eat fitir, a round, flat, layered bread, golden, circular. This bread has been eaten in Egypt for thousands of years. It's not just food. It's a symbol connecting past and present. Researcher Mustafa Gadala from the Egyptian Wisdom Center has documented continuities between ancient Egyptian festivals and later traditions. The winter solstice celebrations and the symbolism of evergreen plants documented in hieroglyphic texts and temple reliefs. Andrew McGowan, writing for Cambridge University Press, notes that early Christians likely chose December 25th to align with existing cultural festivals. This was a common practice, meeting people where they were culturally, if you're spreading a new religion. You don't fight every cultural battle at once. You say, you already celebrate renewal and light at this time. Let's give that deeper meaning. Same season, transformed significance. The Biblical Archaeology Society has published studies on Isis and Mary iconography, side-by-side comparisons. The poses, the gestures, the symbolism, the visual connections are well documented. But this isn't about one tradition copying another. It's about human universals. The mother and child, light conquering darkness, death and rebirth. These are archetypal stories. They appear across cultures because they speak to fundamental human experiences. Egypt didn't invent these themes, but Egypt expressed them powerfully, codified them in stone, built magnificent temples to them, and when new faiths arose in that land, those patterns were there, part of the cultural landscape. So what does this all mean? Why does it matter that Christmas symbols may have echoes of ancient Egypt? Because it tells us something profound about how humans understand the sacred. Think about it. Whether you're an Egyptian priest in 1500 BCE or anyone living today, you live in a world where darkness exists, not just the darkness of night, but the darkness of suffering, of loss, of death. And you long for light, for hope, for renewal. The winter solstice is a perfect metaphor. It's the moment when darkness reaches its peak, when the sun is at its weakest, and then it returns, slowly, imperceptibly at first, but steadily. The days grow longer, the sun climbs higher, the warmth returns. It's a natural cycle, but it feels miraculous, and so humans have always celebrated it. We light candles in the darkness. We decorate with evergreens that refuse to die. We gather with loved ones. We tell stories of divine children, of hope, of salvation. Different cultures, different names, similar themes. Horus, born in difficult circumstances, destined to restore order. Jesus, born in a manger, destined to offer eternal life. Different theologies, different meanings, but both stories about hope in darkness. Stories we need when the world feels dark. Stories that say, the light will return. Hope is not lost. Love persists. These stories take different forms in different cultures, but they serve similar human needs. Imagine standing at the base of the Great Pyramid, or on the winter solstice. The sun low on the horizon, the desert cooler, the ancient stones glowing in the late afternoon light. You're surrounded by thousands of years of history, of human faith, of longing for connection with something greater. The pharaohs who built these monuments, the priests who performed the rituals. They were asking similar questions to those we ask today. Why are we here? What happens when we die? How do we find meaning? And they found answers in the cycle of the sun, in the myth of Osiris, in effect, in the promise of renewal. Those symbols weren't perfect. No human symbols are, but they were powerful enough to sustain a civilization for 3 millennia. And they were powerful enough to influence neighboring cultures, to shape religious thought, to contribute to the symbol system we use today. When you put up your Christmas tree, when you light your candles, when you sing carols about light coming into the world, you're participating in something that connects to ancient human traditions. You're part of a long human story of finding meaning in darkness, of celebrating when light returns, of gathering together in the coldest, darkest time to share warmth and hope. So, is Christmas an Egyptian holiday number? Absolutely not. Christmas is a Christian celebration, rooted in the belief that God entered human history in the form of Jesus Christ to offer salvation. That theological claim is unique to Christianity. But some of the symbols and timing we use to celebrate it, those may have roots in older traditions, including from ancient Egypt. The date, the evergreens, the mother and child imagery, the light symbolism.
And that's not a threat to faith, it's not diminishing. It shows us that the human longing for the sacred is universal.
That different cultures, separated by millennia, can express similar spiritual truths. That light defeating darkness is a human story. And Egypt, glorious, ancient, magnificent Egypt, contributed powerful symbols to human civilization. Symbols that endured, symbols that traveled, symbols that were adapted by later cultures. So this Christmas, as you gather with family, as you exchange gifts, as you light the tree, perhaps take a moment to think about the long human story of celebrating light in darkness. Think about those ancient Egyptians watching the sun weaken at the solstice and trusting it would return. Think about Isis holding Horus, an image of maternal protection that moved hearts thousands of years ago. Think about palm fronds on doorways and evergreen trees in living rooms. Because Christmas is not just about one night in Bethlehem. It's part of a longer human story of reaching for light, of celebrating hope, of finding meaning in cycles of darkness and renewal. The light that the Egyptians saw in their sun, God, the light that Christians recognize in Christ, the light that every culture in its own way has celebrated, the light that shines in the darkness. This has been the eternal light, exploring possible connections between ancient Egypt and Christmas symbolism. Thank you for journeying with me to explore these ancient echoes. May your light shine brightly. This presentation explores possible cultural connections and adaptations based on scholarly research. Not all scholars agree on the extent of Egyptian influence on Christian traditions. The theological meaning of Christmas remains distinct and central to Christian faith. This exploration is meant to enrich understanding of cultural history, not to diminish any faith tradition.